Good morning and welcome to our second day of the workshop AI, Digital Technologies and Economic Outcomes, Cross-Country Evidence and the Role of Policies. I'm Chiara Criscuolo, heading the Productivity, Innovation and Entrepreneurship Division. And before we start, let me briefly remind you that this is a hybrid event. So in addition to those of us joining us this morning in the room, we actually have listeners online via Zoom, and we welcome them as well. Let me also mention that this event is recorded, and for virtual participants, as you did yesterday, you can send any questions you might have via the Zoom chat function. And we will have, as exactly like yesterday, some time for question, and we have colleagues from the OECD Secretariat who have also helped organize the event, Lea and Antonio, sitting there and there, that will assist us in collecting those questions, both here and online. Now, let me go to introduce someone who I've met a few years ago while he was also giving a keynote, and he has been one very memorable keynote because I still remember what it was about. And since then, I've always wanted to have him come and talk to the CIIE because I think what he has to say is extremely relevant for this committee. So let me introduce our keynote speaker of today, Professor Giacomo Calzolari. Giacomo is Professor of Economics at the European University Institute in Florence and is also a research fellow at the CIIPR in London. Giacomo has published in top international journals such as the American Economic Review, the Rand Journal of Economics, the Journal of Economic Theory, and I could go on. Giacomo is also co-editor of the International Journal of Industrial Organization, European Economy, Banks, Regulation, and the Real Sector, and Labor, the Review of Labor Economics and Industrial Relations. Giacomo is a member of the steering committee of the European Association of Industrial Economics, the Association of Competition Economics, and the Economic Advisory Group on Competition Policy of the European Commission. He's a leading researcher on issues around competition policy, artificial intelligence, economics of regulation, industrial organization, but also on banking regulation, supervision, and the economics of incentives. Giacomo, grazie mille, since you are Italian, and it's really our pleasure to welcome you this morning, and we look forward to hearing your insights about the implication of AI for competition. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thanks to you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Chiara, for inviting me. I'm honored. Actually, I'm sorry I could not be physically with you in the room, but I'll do my best to convey some ideas that I've developed throughout some years of work and research on competition and the impact of artificial intelligence on competition. So thanks a lot again. Now, so the first point I would like to discuss with you, it's some wonders of artificial intelligence when it comes to market applications. I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with most of these examples. The reason why I wanted to start with this is because I will soon start discussing with some issues, potentially negative implications of AI in markets, and I don't want to give you the impression that I'm on the side of those that think that AI is just a risk, just a peril for us. On the contrary, I'm an enthusiast of AI, and so that's why I wanted to start with some of the wonders that we have seen recently on AI. So starting with healthcare diagnosis, we know that on some domains, AI has already surpassed human abilities. We have seen drug discovery through AI with AI tools. For example, antibiotics that are for bacteria that were resistant to our known antibiotics, and then ChatGPT on language, revolutionizing the language creation, understanding. self-driving cars that are becoming, sorry,
Giacomo, we
yeah.
are sharing your slides, I think, because we couldn't see yours, and I don't know whether you were not sharing or it wasn't working.
So let me see if let me see so that I can go with. I think I shared.
No, we don't see them.
Let's try just once.
Yes. Now we can. Now we can. Great.
Excellent. So
Thank you, Giacomo, and sorry for interrupting.
no worries. You still see, right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. So yeah, so probably the slides that you haven't seen is this long list of wonders. So as I said, I don't want to give you the impression that I'm mostly focusing on the risks. As I said, I'm an enthusiast of AI, and I'm using almost every day for my own research and as a scholar for my own activities. So when you talk about the implication of AI on markets, I think that there are two types of market you want to discuss. First, the AI in markets through the applications. And if you ask to me what type of markets will be affected, I would say any. Because AI is a very versatile technology, general purpose technology that we use for predictions. And so you can understand that almost any market, if any, will be affected by AI applications. I think it's also interesting to understand this point. What is the AI industry? So the market where people develop AI, and here essentially you can look at the inputs that this industry is using, which is as usual capital, but less usual than in the past, the highly skilled workers for research, for developing algorithms, of course, data to train algorithms, and quite significant amount of computing power. And if you look at the output, these are our AI algorithms, like the foundation models that are at the basis of applications like ChatGPT. So let me walk you through these 2 points. I would like first to start to discuss a little bit about AI as an industry per se and looking at the inputs. So the punchline that you are seeing at this point nowadays is that the private sector is vastly surpassing public investment in AI research and development. So just a few figures here. So if you look at the public sector research funding 21, the US government and the European Commission somehow plan to spend slightly above 1 billion euros or dollars. And if you look at the industry investment in the same year, global industry spending was more than 300 times. And Alphabet, the company alone, with an investment on DeepMind, was spending more than the European Commission has planned to do. So just to give you a sense of global expenditures on other industries, to have an idea how far public spending could go, if we think that the AI industry is something where the public sector should invest. Look at space research, it's slightly below 100 billions. Energy research, close to 40 billions or fewer of dollars. So that's one source of one type of the inputs. Another is competition for talents, for programmers, for coders. So these are figures taken from a recent science, the scientific journal paper, where you see on the left the percentage of AI PhDs that have been hired by the industry. You go in 15 years from less than 25 to more than 75%. Again, really dramatic increase also in faculty that have been hired by this industry from universities. If you look at outputs, you see a similar story. So in the left graph, you see the number of models described with the number of parameters that each one of the model has for the academia, so let's say for the public research. And you see that is somehow flat over 10 years. On the right-hand side, you see the dimensions of the models that have been used, that are on use for the industry, and you see that it has overpassed by a very significant amount the number of parameters that are used in the academia. And the last data I want to show is that if you look at the percentage of the models that are the 10 largest models that are in the hands of the industry, you go from 0 at the beginning of 2000 to close to 100% in the industry. And I think this is really important in terms of the policy implication, and it will have certainly consequences in the future. So there are several issues that you can think about this industry that is evolving this way. Of course, industries are developing excellent models that are directed towards profitability, as they should do. But as an implication, we know that there may be areas of major public interest where that may be left behind or given low priority. This is something that we already seen in the past, for example, in the pharmaceutical sector, and this is, of course, related to some sort of market failures. And on top of that, given the novelties of AI and its application, there may be unforeseen risks. We already know some of them. We discover discrimination, biases, and some unexpected emergent features of this model, which should be addressed. But that companies facing high competition in this period may somehow see as secondary or not particularly relevant. So, and another point, the last point I want to mention, is that with the current developments that I was mentioning before on input and output, so the academia and the public sector may also lack the capabilities of an important role that these players may have, which is auditing and monitoring industry models. I'll come back on that. So this is an industry, AI, where you have high fixed costs, very high fixed costs to run and train these large models, relatively low marginal development cost. You may even have economies of scope, meaning that for companies it's cheaper to develop several models at the same time rather than singular companies producing each one of them. And hence we may observe a market tendency towards market concentration, or even, a platformization of AI services, which is reminiscent of what we have seen for digital platforms. So let me give you a snapshot of what I mean for industry concentration. What you see here is the number of foundation models that are available to companies in 22. As a function of the organization that owns the model, okay, and you see that the top players on the left of this figure are the usual suspect: Google, OpenAI, which is very related, we know, to Microsoft, DeepMind, which is a company of Google, Meta, Microsoft itself, and then you have a long tail of companies that typically have developed one of those models. So I'm not saying that this market structure is necessarily leading to bad outcomes. I'm just mentioning this as a clear an indication of concentration in terms of models. Now, what are the competition policy concerns in this type of the industry? Well, of course, there is a risk of improper use of market power at the development stage of AI tools, and we have to guard against, for example, the usual suspects like predation. And not only this is relevant on the output market, but it's also relevant on the market of skilled workers that are hired by these companies, as I was mentioning before. We have to take care that this market power doesn't, necessarily percolate also downstream towards application, as we have seen several cases, for example, in digital platform markets. There are some clear risks because we have barriers to entry. For example, there is a clear first mover advantage also related to the fact that when you have such an industry that grows at this pace, those who are the first buying key and necessary inputs are buying cheaper, and the latecomers are going to buy these inputs at much higher prices. So the monopolistic distortion that may arise from this type of market power are the usual. On this, there is, in a sense, nothing new. Some people think that we may have a natural monopoly environment. I'm not convinced and think at least it's too early for sure. I think there is on some dimensions room for regulation, for example, in terms of fair access pricing to these large language models for downstream applications, regulation on quality standards. As we know, Europe is luckily, hopefully we'll have soon an act on quality standards on AI, but also on transparency and auditing. And on this, I would like to mention that we may have to think about the possibility to ask companies to have access to these to their models for academic research and policy research. But I'll come back on this on a particular case. Now let's move to the second part I wanted to discuss, that is applications of AI in markets. As I said before, any market is going to be affected, and many of them are already affected by a market application of artificial intelligence. The reason is very simple. Whenever you need predictions, for example, in terms of classification, AI is useful. And so if you are a manager, prediction is your everyday work. So here you see, again, a list of market applications, and you see in bold, in particular, two market applications on which I would like to focus, which is recommender systems and pricing algorithms, which are two areas that I've covered in the last years with my research. Okay, so now how an economist could study the impact of AI in markets? How can we contribute to this type of analysis? Well, first of all, you want to study actual AI systems, okay? And so if you want to do this, you have essentially three possibilities. You may work as a theorist, so you take an algorithm, you study the general properties of the algorithm, and you try to give general implications on the properties of the algorithm. The problem is that this is essentially an intractable approach because algorithms are very complex objects. They're oftentimes black boxes, and so it's very difficult to understand general properties of the algorithms, not only for economists, but also for computer scientists. The second approach would be studying the implications through empirical analysis. The problem there is that we lack good data. That is going back to what I was saying before. In industry, typically have very good data for that, but for research, we don't have, and similarly for authorities. So a third approach is an experimental approach, and we have taken with some colleagues that you see here this approach in order to develop some advancement on our understanding of the impact of AI in markets. So as I said, I will focus devote the rest of my presentation on two specific applications: AI, artificial intelligence for pricing, and for recommendation system. Now, the idea of experimenting the impact of AI is the following. So I just want to spend a few words on the methodological approach because I think it's also potentially useful for authorities that may have similar necessity to understand the implications of AI. So the idea is that we operate actual AI systems for specific application in synthetic and controlled environments. Now, synthetic means that since we are building everything from scratch, we generate all the key economic dimensions that will describe our markets. Control environments means that we can control everything that the algorithm knows, and in particular, the training data that the algorithm is going to use. And then the challenge for this approach are, of course, that you want to have algorithms that are realistic algorithms, meaning that they are close enough to those that are used in actual markets for specific applications. And the second challenge is that the economic environments, the synthetic economic environments that you build must be sufficiently realistic. But on this, as an economist, I think I have something to say, and I'm somehow more familiar and able to build what is needed. Now, the intended contribution for this analysis of experimenting AI in synthetic markets, it's twofold. First is methodological, as I said. It's certainly bringing together economics and computer science and other disciplines as well into an analysis of this realistic environment. And second contribution is that in specific application, we may nail down with some details the implication of AI in those market applications. Okay, so talking about algorithms, if you think about the use of algorithms in market, well, probably there is nothing new under the sun, meaning that there are some industries like hotels, airlines, and financial markets that were heavily using algorithms starting from the past century, the last century. Now, those algorithms were very elaborate collections of rule-based conditions. Essentially, everything that the algorithm does is already coded in the algorithm itself. So if something goes wrong, it's because it has been written that way in the algorithm. Now, the big novelty that we want to study here is artificial intelligence. That is a new class of algorithms that are powered by artificial intelligence. And these are typically very interesting algorithms because they are model-free. Most of the time, they don't care whether you apply in one market rather than in a market. They don't need to know the demand function of the market. They explore the market in a way that they will be able to understand what's happening autonomously. So they autonomously learn from experience. They are already available for market application off the shelf. So if you are a seller, I'll give you examples, then you can already use those algorithms. And what programmers do with these algorithms, they simply specify the objective function. If you are a seller, a good idea is to specify that your objective function is profits. And then the coder specifies what the algorithm should monitor and which data should use. And then the behavior, contrary to the pre-coded algorithm, the behavior is learned by the algorithm itself. Okay, so this is a material difference, a consequential difference. So because algorithms of this type can not only become better than humans, but they also somehow may learn something different, some different behavior with respect to humans are used to do. So let me enter into the first application, AI for pricing. Now, if you are a seller in any digital market, you have nowadays, well, I would say since 10 years at least, the possibility to delegate your pricing decision to an algorithm. Okay, so it has been documented or 8 years ago at this point that already 30% of the market of the prices that you would observe on Amazon were set by algorithm. And Amazon itself, as a platform, somehow suggests sellers to automate the pricing decision with through their API interface. And there is nowadays an entire new industry that is called repricing of companies, software companies that sell as a service, repricing tools that are used by sellers to price. And for, you see, that cheap money, $50, slightly lower, actually discounted $50 for an intelligent repricing tool for Amazon. Now, so the analysis that we have performed is, as I said, we set an economic environment where firms delegate pricing decision to own algorithms. These are the AI pricing agents. And these sellers and their algorithms repeatedly compete on synthetic markets that we build, as I was mentioning before. And these algorithms are going to repeatedly interact, observe prices, observe market outcomes, and we are interested as a researcher to observe actually the prices that will emerge in this type of market. So let me give you a snapshot of what type of algorithms we have used for this application. We have used what is called reinforcement learning algorithms for good reasons. They are very well fit for the type of purpose that I'm discussing here. And by the way, they are known to be very successful for the core of the algorithm in AlphaGo that was able to defeat a few years ago the human champion on the game of Go was actually using a reinforcement learning algorithm. So what these algorithms do is relatively simple. They maximize profits over time, just monitoring the prices that they see around. And when it comes to decide which price to use at any point in time, they essentially have two choices that they autonomously go for. One is exploiting the market, as computer scientists say. That is, for us, economists would mean set the optimal price. And alternatively, they may decide to explore the market. That is, to set a price that is not the optimal price, so in some cases with some random price, which is used to explore how the market reacts to these different prices. Then they record the outcomes. They update what they've learned, that is the profitability of the action, the particular prices that they've used, and then they go back and repeat this in a loop throughout the market interaction. So the research question for us was, what prices will these AI-powered pricing algorithms end up with? And the answer is, first answer is in this picture here. So do you see the frequency in some of our experiments, the frequency of prices that have been charged by this algorithm, that this algorithm have learned to charge by interacting over time. And you see the distribution being way above to the competitive price that you have at the bottom of the distribution, and very close or around the monopolist price that is indicated by this arrow, red arrow. Okay, so the first message is, well, this algorithm learned to charge autonomously, that's important, learn to charge high prices. Now, why high prices? Wouldn't it be possible for a competitor seeing a market with these high prices entering and apply the user force of competition, which would be undercut these high prices and get most of the demand? So what did they learn? So we wanted to dig into this AI algorithm. That's a problem because, as I said, AI algorithms, even is relatively simple market application, are very complex objects. These fancy graphs are two preliminary attempts we developed in the past, trying to understand what was going on. The answer was that face value, looking inside of the algorithm, is almost impossible. This is a known problem for computer scientists, is the problem of explainability of artificial intelligence. So we try to think about something closer to what an economist actually can do. And I think that's something useful for authorities because it gives you some methodological approach to address some of the issues like explainability. So what you see in this picture here is two algorithms that were trained in a market and they've learned to behave in a market. So agent 1, red algorithm, agent 2, blue algorithm. And you see that they after learning, they have learned to price this price close to 1.8, which is very close to the monopolist price, the green dashed line, and way above the competitive price, which is the bottom dashed line. Okay, so that's the situation. What we have done is the following exercise. We have taken the red algorithm for one period, and we forced it to reduce its price quite significantly. As you see, the red line goes down. That was us. For just one period, forcing this action on our own. And then the interesting part of the story was let's look what happens, in particular, what the blue algorithm would do. And this is what we discovered. these algorithms not only learn to charge high prices, as you see, 1.8, they also learn to punish price reduction. So the red algorithm was reducing its price, and the blue algorithm autonomously, the period after, decided to dramatically reduce its own price. So the algorithms find themselves for low prices for some periods. And then we also discover what you see next. They go back to high prices after some time. So essentially what these algorithms have learned is reward and punishment and forgiveness, essentially. So a very robust form of collusion, such that it never pays off to undercut rivals in the way that we did in this experiment. So they have learned to behave in a way that completely mutes competition. This is what economists would call tacit collusion, exactly the tacit collusion that we discuss in our courses. Now, what about competition authorities? Well, competition authorities require more than that. There must be, in order to decide that firms are colluding, there must be meeting of minds, so intention to collude, but there must be also evidentiary standard in order to make a case on collusion. Now, do these algorithms, did they have intention to collude? No, because they learn autonomously to do so. Did the managers have intention to collude? Again, no, because they delegated pricing decision to algorithm, just saying, maximize my profit. So the problem, this type of problem that I'm showing here is that today, this type of algorithmic collusion is essentially lawful. Okay, so that's an example where we really have to rethink our ability to look and investigate markets. So in the few minutes that I'm left with, I just want to mention another application of AI that I've studied with my co-authors, which is a recommendation system. Now, I'm sure that you notice when you navigate digital platforms that you have so many alternatives, like so many different type of products to buy, news to read, movies to watch, songs, financial assets to buy and sell. So, which is really difficult. So just a few figures here. So the number of products that you find on Amazon Marketplace nowadays is more than 300 millions of products. 90 millions of songs on Spotify. How can you organize your consumer's decision in this environment? Well, computer scientists developed tools which are called recommender systems that would allow you precisely to navigate in this very complicated environment. These are softwares that are providing personalized recommendation or suggestions to users, that is consumers, about specific items and products. And I want to emphasize the word personalized. So the recommendations that the system offer to consumers would be, the recommendation would be different from to me with respect to the recommendation that they may offer to Chiara, for example. Okay, and they're based on what they call they are collaborative tools. That is, they collect information on past users' valuations of certain items and infer with this prediction problem, solving this prediction problem, the value of the different items for other consumers who never tried those items. Now, that's an example. When you go to Amazon, you are prompted personalized recommendations, as you see here for books. Now, this is just an example. So all the products I was mentioning before, all the platforms are using already recommender systems. Why do we care about that? Well, recommender systems are already deployed in the market and somehow dramatically and silently, in a sense, affecting market behavior, consumers' behavior. So just to mention a few numbers, 75% of the movies that people watch on Netflix have been recommended to those viewers. 35% of pages that I've seen on Amazon have been recommended, and 40% of the songs that we listen to Spotify, and so on and so forth. So there are worries about the implication of this recommendation. You may know there is a hot policy debate on the risk on competition and even democracy, because when the items we are talking about is news, then you may have an implication in terms of what people think about politics and etc. The Digital Service Act specifically referred to recommendation system with saying that all large online platforms should mitigate the negative effects of personalized recommendations. Personally, I think we don't know yet whether these effects are negative or not. And that's why one of the reasons why I developed this research. There is a risk that these algorithms generate a get-richer effect where they exasperate popularity of items or specific news. And there is another point I want to mention, which is a potential problem that is called feedback loop issue, which is endemic. That's why I think it's important to know in any AI application in markets. And the idea is the following. Remember, AI tools are tools that they need data to be trained and retrained over time. Once you start applying AI tools in markets, these tools are going to affect markets. This is going to generate new data that are then fed back into the algorithm for new training. So you have this feedback loop issue, then we don't know exactly what happens, whether it is going to be an additional source of biases. Now, the economic environment that we have studied is similar. There will be firms selling different items on the platforms, users searching for the best matches. They have their own preferences, and they, of course, would like to buy the best products at the lowest possible price. And there will be a platform using a recommender system. So a recommender system here is in the class of computer scientists called model-based collaborative filtering. Is getting data, actually big data on past user ratings. They predict individual preferences on items that users have never tried. For any user, they rank the predicted match value, and then they provide personalized recommendations showing to each one of the users what is the preferred rank item. So we want to know with this research what happens in a world where you introduce a recommender system. So the benchmark case would be a situation where individuals have to, autonomously search this market, paying some search cost. And we want to know what happens in this environment if you add the recommendation systems. So a first result that we observed is that recommender systems tend to create superstar products. What you see is on the left-hand side, the market share of the typical products in the absence of recommender system, and the green chart shows what happens to market shares of product when you introduce the recommender system. You see that there are products with very large market shares where in the benchmark with no recommender system there shouldn't be. And we also see that the fact that endogenous data may be a problem actually doesn't show up here as a major force. So there are biases mostly in the algorithm rather than in the data. Now, if you want to know what is the effect on consumer surplus, if you keep prices constant, then the recommender system increase user surplus. So they're very effective in finding the best match value item for different users, and this allows user to save on search cost. But if you look at prices, okay, how sellers that know now that consumers are helped by the recommender system in their search behavior and their decision, how they react in changing prices. So this heat map shows you that all across the board prices increase. That is, the mediation of the recommender system in consumer choices is actually substantially and systematically increasing prices. Now, we somehow open up the box as we did for the other research, trying to understand what was the cause of this price increase. And what is interesting is that with the tools of an economist, you can somehow study what is the so-called algorithmic demand. That is the demand that is expressed by consumers once they are mediated by the algorithmic recommendation. This is the red line that you see, the red curve that you see in this graph, and the blue curve is the consumer's demand as it would have been if they were on their own with no recommendation system. So I will not go into the detail, but somehow we were able to detect a certain number of reshaping of the demand function. So an upward shift, a counterclockwise rotation, rectangularization of the demand. All these demand changes have implications in terms of pricing outcome, okay? And we can then net out the overall impact. So that's another example where we can say something on with this type of experimental approach. If you ask myself, what about the policy implication of these results? Probably it's too early to reach conclusion in terms of policy. But certainly we found that in these environments, our recommender system increased market concentration, generating these superstar firms. They increase price. Net of prices, consumer surplus continue to be positive in many cases, not always. And so there is, a sense that we need really to closely monitor these algorithms and their deployment in market. And we also detected a possibility, an interesting invert U-shaped between actual consumer surplus and the amount of information that you give to the algorithms, meaning that from the social welfare point of view, you may even find an optimal amount of information that you want to give to this algorithm. So overall, I think we still need a lot of work on that, more this type of work, which is very close to what is called the sandboxing approach. And in order to study other dimensions of implication of these recommender systems, for example, long-run effects, where you may have entry and exit of sellers on this market, and what happens when there are competing recommender systems. Yeah, so this is all what I wanted to tell you. And of course, I will be very happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Giacomo. I think this was fascinating. I think especially, the experiment that you described, the use of algorithms in pricing decisions. And I heard, many strange sounds here. People were kind of like giggling, smiling, like, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." I think it raised many, many more questions. Now I have the pleasure to open the floor up to questions first in the room. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, so I would try to please ask you to keep them as short as possible, and then we will move to questions online. No one in the room. So then, okay, then let me have a look online. We got quite a few. So let me start with the first one. What role do you think, Giacomo, should authorities or governments play in intervening or regulating AI-based pricing strategies, and on which side? So should it be with regards to data regulation? Should it be with regards to price regulation?
Thanks a lot for this question, which I think it's very, very important. So, so what I think is the most important way to go is the ability to audit algorithms in real markets. So auditing is it's on the debate of regulation for artificial intelligence. But you have to nail down the details of what auditing means, because if a company gives you, the code, you would end up with a kind of very complicated figures and graphs that was showing you before, and that somehow led us to say, well, there is nothing we can say about that. So the type of auditing which we need is really access to the algorithms, in the sense of being able to understand what happens if we manipulate the algorithm in one direction or in another direction, or manipulate the market in one direction and another direction. This doesn't need to be done in real market, which could cause costs for companies and consumers. It could be done in synthetic embedded environment, precisely as with the type of sandboxing approach I was mentioning before. So to me, auditing is a key element. There is also discussion about transparency, whether to impose transparency on algorithm or explainability. Now, I'm working with computer scientists precisely on this, and it turns out something that probably people, so it's something that is not very known. There is a trade-off between transparency and effectiveness of this algorithm. So if you want to impose explainability, this is, in terms of the algorithm and the optimization process of the algorithm, this is actually additional constraints. And the performance of the algorithm is, in some cases, significantly diminished by explainability. So I think that's an important element in the discussion. Ex-ante transparency or transparency by design of the algorithm, we have to be cautious because it's negatively affecting the performance of these algorithms. And so the so-called post hoc approach I was mentioning before, with auditing the algorithms and their behavior, is, in my view, a more effective approach.
Thank you. So you basically already answered one of the second question, which was referring to transparency, and also a bit what role firms play there and whether they should be required to disclose more about their pricing algorithms. So let me move to the next question. We have 3 more minutes. So unfortunately, I need to ask you to be very short with your response, because the question is actually also very long. What would be your recommendation to governments to address the risk of increased tacit collusive outcomes with the diffuse use of pricing algorithms or AI, changing the competition laws, but then how? Or do you see any other way to address this issue?
Thank you. No, I don't think at this stage there is a need to change the competition law. I think there is a need to change the practice of competition law. So if we know more about the algorithms, their behavior, then we can already start classifying algorithms as less or more risky. So much in line like the approach that is taken in the hopefully to come AI Act in Europe. So some classes of algorithms may be more prone to collusion than others, and then again, this goes back to my previous point, the ability to systematically assess algorithms' behavior in markets.
Great, thank you so much. We have one more question because we still have a bit of time. Does the result of tacit collusion of algorithms require some degree of concentration and some, even if minimal, switching costs or switching lag? Thank you.
So that's an excellent question that we address in our research. What is stunning in that result is that the behavior of these algorithms and the type of collusion they autonomously learn is absolutely in line with economic theory of tacit collusion. Hence, we did some comparative static analysis that shows that if you increase the number of firms in the market, in the example I gave you was the very concentrated market with just 2 firms. If you increase the number of firms in the market, as you should expect from the theory of tacit collusion, the ability to charge high prices reduces over time, right? So, and the more firms are in the market, the lower is the price that these algorithms are setting. So in the limit, when the market is sufficiently competitive, collusion is non-sustainable, and also these algorithms would compete as humans would do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Giacomo. Thanks a lot also on behalf of everyone here in the room and online. And we are finished on time with this session. So now I move on and give the floor to Francesca Lotti. Thanks again, Giacomo.
Thanks to you. Thanks for your attention and the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Giacomo. I think we can move on with the next session. So we are going to have Sarah first, that's going to give us a broad overview about the project on business dynamics, competition, digitalization, and AI. And after Sarah, we're going to have a talk by Natalia, that she's going to tell us about Portuguese firm, digital technology, and exporting performance. Then we're going to have Matthias. Okay, hi, good to see you. Okay, Matthias is going to tell us about the productivity effects of IT investment, particularly focusing on the role on innovation and competition, if I got it right. And then we have Jay Han. Nice to meet you. He's going to tell us about AI adoption for productivity in Korea. And last but not least, Julia on the other side of the table, and she's going to give us a focus on Ireland and discussing about how advanced digital technologies and the relationship with innovation and profitability. So productivity, sorry. I got mixed with profits and collusion, we're stuck with the previous thing. So I'm going to leave the floor to Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francesca. Good morning, everybody. Today, I'm gonna just set the scene for this session by providing some evidence arising from OECD work on topics related to productivity, business dynamism, and competition. So the aim of this session is linking the aim of digital technologies and in particular AI with productivity, business dynamism, and competition. When doing this link, there are a number of questions that arise. In particular, we wonder if the diffusion of advanced technologies and AI provide advantage to the largest firms, and we just heard something about it in the keynote. And we also wonder what are the implications for productivity and business dynamism, as well as the challenges for competition. Of course, in this context, it's important to understand what is the role for public policy. The OECD work has touched and touches upon several of these dimensions. And in particular, there has been and there is work on increasing productivity divergence, increasing markups, concentration, and entrenchment, which provides cross-country perspective using novel firm-level and micro-distributed data. There is also ongoing work on merger and acquisition. So in particular, there is some work matching novel data to explore merger and acquisition activities and their implication for innovation. And there is work also identifying new forms of competition arms arising from digital sector mergers. But today I will give you just an overview of some of the results from our work. So what do we see so far in the OECD work? First of all, what we have seen is an increase in productivity gap between global frontier firms and the other firms, both in low digital intensive sectors on the left-hand side of this slide and on the in highly digital intensive sectors on the right-hand side. More specifically, these graphs are showing you that productivity dispersion has been increasing over time and more so in highly digital intensive sectors. In addition, OECD work has also shown that in digital intensive sectors, we have seen a faster decline in dynamism and a higher increase in markups. On the left-hand side, indeed, we show that entry rates declined faster in digital intensive sectors. And on the right-hand side, we see that markups, which are a measure widely used as a proxy for market power, have been increasing more in digital intensive sectors than in less digital intensive ones. And that the divergence among the two groups has been increasing over time in addition. Moreover, we also see that in digital intensive sectors, there has been an increase in concentration and in M&A activity. On the left-hand side, we plot concentration for highly digital versus low digital intensive sectors. Here, concentration is measured as the share of sales accounted for the four business largest group in a market. And you can see that concentration has been increasing over the last 20 years. And the difference among the two groups is, in this case, not striking. On the right-hand side, instead, we report for the last years available up to 2020, the share of M&A activity where the acquirer is in highly digital intensive industries. And you can see that this share has increased over time, shifting from about 30% of total deals to 80% of total deals in 2020. And it has been increasing a lot during the COVID crisis. So the OECD work has shown that most economies appear to be less dynamic with increased productivity dispersion, increased markups, and increased industry concentration. Second, it has been showing that digitalization and in particular AI may lead to new competition concerns and challenges for existing competition authorities. And it has been mentioned just before. So it is a bit early to tell whether this risk will materialize and how it's going to be the overall impact on the market. However, what is certain is that policies will play a key role in ensuring that digital technologies provide a digital transformation which is at the same time inclusive. So let me close this setting the scene with some open questions. So will AI adoption have an effect on productivity and market power of firms? What is the right mix of policies to foster innovation while at the same time boosting diffusion? And are competition policies equipped to address the potentially significant impact of the digital transformation to competition dynamics? So with this open question, I thank you all very much for the attention. I leave the floor to Francesca, who will chair the session.
Okay, and sorry, we're gonna change each other. Okay, so let's start with our amazing round. Yes, I was told that you have 10 minutes more or less for your presentation, so don't blame me, and I will leave the floor right away to Natalia. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Today I will present some results related to AI and its implications for Portuguese firms. This study, it's an empirical work, and you try to find a statistical link between adoption of AI and some related digital technology and export performance. When I talk about AI and related digital technology, I look for a set of heterogeneous digital technologies that we could identify as digital technologies that enable an Industry 4.0 transformations. And this is a large set of technologies that we'll try to link with exporting performance for Portuguese firms. The motivation for these studies is quite common, as you know that the adoption of digital technologies and the growth digitalization of economic activities is open an opportunity to foster the technological diffusions machine. And it is important because one possible justification of the modern productivity paradox is that this machine of technology diffusions is so much not good, and you find some results that are not unexpected. So if you look at AI as a fundamental technology shift, so you have an indication that this digital technology have power to engender strong positive effects on productivity. If so, it will be expected a more involvement in terms of international markets and firm expansion in these markets. But the connection between AI and AI-related digital technologies and the exporting performance at firm level is quite scarce and yield a mixed results and explanations. In the case of the Portuguese economy, there has been a strong effort in terms of public incentives to firms' digitalization and to be involved in international markets. And if so, it's important to evaluate this kind of public effort and to see if there are any link between these two realities, AI adoption and expose in international markets. So the aims of this research are mainly three. The main aim is to investigate the impact of AI and other relates digital technology on the intensive margin of exports is the main aim. But before that, I will try to identify the main factors that explain adoption of this set of heterogeneous technologies, and at the end to explore where there is difference across industries on the impact of AI and AI-related digital technologies on the intensive margin of exports. For that, you can identify a theoretical background that is more or less common in this kind of type of research. The factors that explain adoptions is more or less common. You can identify 3 blocks of them. One of them is excellent firm performance, is a good predictor of adoption. The other one is other specific characteristics of the firms and the external context, in particular the industry or the market where firms compete. And in particular of digital technologies, you can identify a block of complementarity resources that explain adoptions, like digital skills and infrastructure related to digitalization. Looking at the link between digital technologies and a firm exposure in international markets, there are several channels that have been identified in the literature that explain a positive relation or an expected positive relation between digital technologies and the intensity of export, or if you want, the intensive margin of export. You don't go through this one because I'm trying to show the results, the empirical results. For that, use data for Portuguese firms that come from 2 different sources. One of them is part of the community survey on ICT usage and e-commerce. It's common to several countries. And the other one, it's annual census of Portuguese firms, is like administrative data on firms' performance, firm characteristics, and other information that are specific to Portuguese firms. And I need to match these 2 sources of data. And for that, I collect the different waves of the community survey on ICT and use the temporal period between 2042-2020 with gaps, because the community survey on ICT is not a regular survey, and I needed to match many waves of this survey. At the end, I can manage to have a sample or more or less 30,000 unique firms, where some of them, more or less a quarter of them, are observed at least 2 years. In terms of econometric strategy, you follow more or less the Calvino and Fontanelli work disclosed each year, and the dependent variable, my main interest is in exporting performance, here measured by the flat firm foreign sales per employees. So looking at some empirical results, you can see more or less that the rate of adoptions in case of the Portuguese firms is, not surprisingly, it's quite low. Only 8% of the observed firms are adopting one of the digital technologies that you identify as enable the Industry 4.4 transformation. And there are significant difference among large firms and small firms, and among exporter and no exporting firms. These differences are also realize and important in the other variables like ECT skills and digital infrastructures, and also in terms of exporting performance. Looking at the explanatory factors of adoptions at firm level, okay, I'll see it's a common result in this kind of studies, like a positive selection towards large firms is not surprising. And the other common result is that ICT skills and digital infrastructure are so relevant to the adoption among all the digital technologies I have research in this pipe. Okay, you have no so much time, so you go to the impacts on exporting performance, and you find important results. If you look at the E4.0 variable, that means that a firm adopt at least one of these heterogeneous sets of digital technology. You find that digital technologies are able to leverage technology investments in the international markets by increasing the level of foreign sales per word. There are scale effects as usual, and there is also an important result related to the number of other digital technologies adopted. It means that the degree of openness and sophistication in adoption these kind of technologies is a positive impulse to export performance. If you look specifically, if you look at the EI, you means that it's not possible to find a significant link between the adoption of this technology and export performance. But if you go to some distinctions between industries, it's possible to identify that this digital technology have power to engender exporting gains in some sectors. And this implies that you perhaps need to go further and deeper to analyze this kind of technology and the impact in different sectors. So to conclude, I need to go. So these results allow to uncover heterogeneous export effects across different digital technology and different industries. The positive selections towards largest firms is an important result in the sense that it might generate a disproportionate economic impact, but this also might exacerbate existing divides in terms of productivity and no impact at aggregate level. Possibility, you can find here an explanation for the modern productivity paradox, in the sense that only large firms may take benefit from the adoption of this technology. And if you keep in mind, Portuguese firms are 95% small firms, the impact in the Portuguese economy will be quite reduced and not so significant. And it's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I hand over the floor to Matthias. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So good morning all together. Thanks for inviting me to this very interesting workshop. So I'm going to present a paper on productivity effects of IT investments, the role of innovation and competition. So this is a joint work together with other two colleagues from ETH Zurich, Torbjörn Hedland and Martin Werther, and with Dmitry Plekhanov from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So in this paper, we investigate the question, so how can companies achieve productivity gains through investing in digitalization? So as this article from the New York Times illustrates, this question is still being debated, and not only in the academic, but also in the corporate world. And in our opinion, it's a very important question. So how can companies can make productive use from digitalization and digital technologies? So also some important work has been done under the umbrella term of Solow's productivity paradoxon. It remains still particularly unclear through which mechanisms and under which conditions firms can increase their productivity by investing in digitalization. And in this research, we focus on the role of innovation as an important mechanism and consider different competitive market regimes for the relationship between firm-level productivity and IT and investments. So some small remarks on the theoretical background. So we ground our theoretical consideration on the knowledge and capability-based view and integrate the Recreen effect theory. So this allows us to argue that not only the levels of IT investments and the levels of a firm's ability to innovate are important for productivity, but in particular, the deviations from their industry peers. And in addition, we argue that for the IT productivity effects, the competitive environment of the firms matters. And here we distinguish between price competitive markets, so markets that have at least a certain degree of price competition, distinguishing between a lower and a higher number of principal competitors in these markets. And this leads us to our hypothesis, and I would like to focus on the hypothesis 3, where we argue that in competitive markets, firms can increase their productivity when they exceed their industry peers in both IT investments and innovation capabilities. So to address our set of hypotheses, we use a large-scale panel data from Swiss firms stemming from manufacturing and service industries. And we use data from our representative ETH Zurich COF enterprise panel, which gives us information about firms' activities related to the digital transformation, as well as general firm characteristics and innovation characteristics of the firms. So for the sake of empirical identification, we restrict this sample to firms that we can at least observe in 4 consecutive waves. And this leaves us with slightly above 1,000 firm year observation of firms that we can observe at least in 4 consecutive waves. And in terms of our measure, I would like to stress out that we use for firm level productivity, total factor productivity, which is like the residual of productivity when we control for the contribution of the inputs of capital and labor. And for radical product innovation, so these are the sales generated by the firms with new products and services to the firm. So given this longitudinal data and our hypothesis with at least 2 endogenous variables, we apply a dynamic panel data estimation model, which is introduced by Sebastian Gripfgans, which is like a follow-up of the famous Orellano bond estimator. And by this approach, we can control for a large amount of time invariant and time varying unobserved firm-specific heterogeneity. And in addition, we can also control for the persistence of productivity over time by including the lag dependent on the right-hand side. So more interesting now to the results. And I would like to first continue with the results across all types of markets. And here we can see that we do not find statistically significant direct effects of IT investments. So neither in terms of levels nor of deviations. And also when IT investments are combined with radical product innovation capabilities, we do not find statistically significant effects. And now So this is the summary of across all types of markets. And now we move on when we account for the different competitive markets. And here I would like to start with price competitive markets with a fewer number of main principal competitors in the markets, the oligopolistic competitive markets. And here we can find statistically significant positive interaction of effects of the deviations of IT investments and deviations of radical product innovation capabilities. So our hypothesis 3 can be supported, and I'm sorry we do not see here the confidence intervals. So sorry for that. So let's move to the second competitive market with many principal competitors, the polypolistic competitive markets. And here we can see for this combinations of deviations in IT investments and deviations in radical product innovation capabilities, a negative statistically significant effect. And again, the confidence intervals are missing, but I have also like a, that was too fast. Okay, here, these heat maps summarize the effects that we have found. And in the competitive oligopolistic markets, we can see that the deviations in IT investments on the horizontal axis and the deviations in radical product innovation capabilities on the vertical axis, that these combination leads to productivity gains of the firms, whereas this combination in the competitive polypolistic markets leads to productivity decreases. And here in that type of market, we can see that the standalone effects of deviation in IT investments and the standalone effects of deviations in radical product innovation leads to productivity gains. So we conducted a series of robustness checks and rule out also alternative explanation that can contribute to productivity gains that originate from other sources than radical product innovations, such as, for instance, production cost savings following process innovations. But these additional tests do not contradict our findings. And I would like to conclude. So we think that with our findings, we can stress out the important role of innovation and different types of innovation in the context of the digital transformation of companies to realize productivity gains from investments in digital technologies, and that these IT productivity effects depend on the different competitive markets. And we think that these findings have implications to derive competitive strategies of the firms in the context of the digital transformation. And we highlight that the configurations of deviation from peers matters to create competitive advantages. And when the deviation from peers are relevant, then the selection of appropriate reference points become important for the firms. So from whom to deviate and then what to deviate from your industry peers. And altogether, we think that we can contribute to a nuanced perspective on the complementary capabilities that are necessary to increase productivity by investing in IT, technologies, and that these complementary capabilities and intangible assets depend on the characteristics of competitive markets. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Now I hand the floor to Jay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm gonna present evidence of Korea regarding the AI adoption and economic outcomes. And today's talk, I first introduce briefly AI-related survey and data in Korea. And then my team and my co-authors have completed 4 or 5 research already, and few of them already published to a journal. So from our research, I mostly introduced the pattern of the AI adoption in Korea, and also one result regarding the AI adoption and productivity. And detailed part is that you can easily actually find our paper. So I deleted the all detailed part. I gonna introduce only main result part, okay? So in Korea, we have a firm level data survey, which called the Survey of Business Activities. This is from the Statistics Korea. This is one of the representative official firm level data set, which covered all establishment with 50 or more regular workers. And then every year it covered I said 13 or 14,000 establishment. And then most of Korean researchers who are interested in farm level data, we often use this data set. And then good news is that actually back to the 2018 and the Statistics Korea added a questionnaire regarding the adoption of 9 advanced fourth industrial revolution technology, of course, include the AI, big data, mobile, and etc. But this survey is the asking the respondents whether they have adopted AI or not, and then the outcome is the binary variable. If you adopt AI, it's a 1 and not and 0. So this is more like a direct questionnaire. But if you see the most of the research for AI, they measure the actually difference. They measured a lot of different ways to measure the AI adoption. One is the patent, the other is the like a job posting. Yesterday, some of the research mentioned that. The problem of these two measures is more like a measure the capability of a firm. It's not really measure the practical adoption of the firm's, firm's AI adoption. So of course, I mean, these direct questions cannot measure the quality of AI, but at least we know that these firms really use the AI at the certain years or certain time. Okay. So let me move that. And then the definition of AI in this survey is pretty much shorter than OECD definition, but the core part is pretty much similar. So I quickly move on that. So with this data, we complete the 4 or 5 research project, and then I'll show the pattern of the AI adoption in Korea from these results. And then as you can expect, the share of AI adoption has been increasing over time, but surprisingly, the proportion of still low. If you see the graph and back to the 2017, only 1.4% of establishment or firm adopt AI, but now 2021, it's too small even to me. So 4% of firms adopt AI. I mean, so this is why this is surprising, because most of now the research doesn't cover the actually large number of samples. So if you see some of the research result, the AI adoption rate is pretty much high. But if you cover the actually large sample, only a few companies actually adopt AI. And then our ratio is pretty much consistent to the US finding recently. And then second part is that as we can expect, and there is a large heterogeneity in adoption across the industry. If you see the graph, and we can, as we expected, ICT sector have almost 20% of adoption rate. The other one is I didn't check that, but education part. The education part is interesting because in Korea, their adoption ratio have been increasing very fast. And the other part is also financial and insurance service. But mostly we are interested in manufacturing, but manufacturing sector is only 2%, only 2% from adopted AI. And then this is the kind of pattern of the AI adoption. Let me start from the upper right, and then mostly large company more likely to adopt AI, and then bottom left, and the more younger company likely to adopt AI. That is the most of research also show the same style effect. The upper left, they show the mostly the company who adopted AI, they use the actually self-developed AI technology instead of outsourcing. That is the same as yesterday Denmark's case. And then if you see the bottom right, and most of the company use the AI technology and product and service development. So even we think the AI is a general purpose technology, and then we can apply to any specific task like a human. But if you see the real data, actually very specific task, a company used actually AI. And this result comes from a little bit due to industrial heterogeneity. If you see the production process, if you see the manufacturing sector, product process ratio probably higher than this graph. But as we saw in the previous graph, the manufacturing adoption rate is low. Okay. So next part, this is the relationship between the technology. I mean, complementary with between the advanced technology. This graph is symmetric. So if you see the either column or row, if you see the AI, you can see the IoT and cloud, big data, mobile. And then this graph tells us that if you adopt the AI, actually, this company also use this IoT, cloud, big data, mobile often. And then we did a more sophisticated analysis in a paper. So at the time we estimate not just to use the AI itself, we actually define the firms who adopt AI initially, which means the last year they didn't use the AI, and this year they use the AI. In that case, we found out that when firms adopt initially AI technology, they also initially adopt big data, cloud, IoT, mobile. But interesting part is that if you see the lag time, we can find only big data, which means if I plan to use the AI technology, always this firm initially adopt the big data last year. So in that sense, big data is kind of a prerequisite technology or some, I don't know, depending how you define then it can be infrastructure, whatever. Okay. So this is pattern of the AI adoption in Korea. And then I briefly introduce AI adoption and firm productivity, which work from Song and Cho, my colleague, Dr. Song. And already actually Professor Beck mentioned a lot of issues regarding the productivity, but overall productivity regression, AI adoption and productivity regression, the result actually varies depending on which industry, which samples, which years. So it's not inconclusive. So what we have done, and then the other problem is that even we find a positive relationship between AI and productivity, it tells nothing actually for us. I mean, I am an economist, we are happy for the positive relationship, but it didn't really talk about mechanism. So in this paper, we target to explain what really happened under the prompt. So what we have done in this paper, we actually consider the manufacturing company, and then we actually match this manufacturing company into the plant level data. Okay, I almost finished. And then we estimate what happened for a firm who adopted AI. We find the three key findings. First one is that overall, actually, we cannot find a positive relationship between AI adoption and productivity. But second one is that we find the positive relationship for the multi-plant firm, which means actually 50% higher compared to a single plant firm. And then we estimate what happened, and then we find out why their productivity is increasing, because when you adopt AI, the plant level productivity gap actually shrink, which means actually your worst plant to catch up to your best plant. That's what we find out. And then I wrap up for some of the question for our next year research. And our actually quick question is that how is AI different from the existing technology? Actually, so far we are a little bit disappointed. Even we are like OECD, we provide advice to the government based on the empirical work, but our empirical work, nothing different from the most of the technology issue. So we actually provide advice to the government agent, and then nothing different from the R&D policy. So next year, actually, we're more digging why AI is so unique. That's our question. Second question is why adoption of AI is still limited. And second question is related to the third question is related to the second. And then why increasing productivity only happens in a small group of companies. So two questions is especially important for many issues. Should we just wait? Some people say that, oh, next year, over time, maybe we adopt AI more, but that's too naive in my opinion. And also if you let them just in a market, probably divergence between the firm who adopt AI and not, the productivity gap is increasing, which is the issue of the inclusiveness. So I think there is some rooms government have to intervene using some government policy tools. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, especially the look ahead. I think we're going to come to that in the discussion. So now I'll hand the floor to Julia. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Inviting me to contribute to this session. I am very happy indeed to present research results from an ongoing project I'm leading at our institute. The project examines digital technologies and firm performance in Ireland. Today, I will focus on artificial intelligence and firm productivity. And this work is joined with my colleague, Juan Duran. So in terms of the motivation for this research, this is very similar to what we have already discussed yesterday and this morning. Digital technologies are seen as modern general purpose technologies that have a vast potential to enhance innovation and productivity of firms. To the extent that it is desirable to maximize these potential benefits from a policy perspective, understanding what factors influence the adoption and the use of these digital technologies across firms and how they affect firm performance is important. So in terms of the main research questions, we focus on two main objectives. So first of all, we examine which firms use artificial intelligence and digital technologies. And secondly, we examine the relationship between using artificial intelligence and other technologies and firm productivity. So apart from artificial intelligence, we also examine the use of Internet of Things, which is also considered an advanced digital technology, and also other digital technologies such as cloud computing services and software for sharing information electronically within the enterprise, such as software for integrating internal processes and software for integrating with customers and suppliers. To guide our empirical analysis, we take insights from the theoretical literature on the adoption and diffusion of new technologies. And the main outcome of these theoretical models is that the adoption and diffusion of new technologies is uneven across firms, across sectors, space, and actually also over time. And there are a number of reasons why not all firms adopt new technologies at the same time. And I would like to highlight two of them. So first of all, returns to from the adoption of these new technologies are risky, they are uncertain. Therefore, initially, only a fraction of potential adopters would wish to use these new technologies because, as I say, the returns are risky. So only those firms which can cover those risks adopt first. So they are early adopters. And as long as more firms adopt new technologies, there are learning effects. So we expect that over time, the adoption rates increase. And a second reason is that the returns from adopting new technologies vary across firms. So first, firms which reap high benefits, high returns from new technologies, adopt these technologies. So taking together the results from these theoretical models, the factors influencing the adoption and diffusion of new technologies can be grouped into sets. So first of all,
there are firm internal capabilities, firm characteristics, such as firm size, age, sector, skills, very important factor, as well as technological and research capabilities. There are also external factors, so the environment in which firms operate, like Matthias very well described. So these are related to competition, but also infrastructure, knowledge spillovers from early adopters, as well as access to finance and public policies. So in terms of the data we use for this empirical analysis, the main source of data is the 2021 e-commerce and ICT survey, where we have information about the usage of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. These data have been collected for the first time, and unfortunately only in 2021, but we also have information on cloud computing services and software used for sharing information electronically within the firm. So we have a sample of 1,554 firms in the business sector, firms with 10 or and more employees. And we merge this data with information from 3 other surveys. And first of all, we use data on accounting variables of balance sheet data from the Census of Industrial Production for firms in the industry and the annual services inquiry for firms in services. So this data for 2020, and we also use data from the business register in 2020, where we have information about the date of the firm registration and the firm location. So the data have been provided by the Central Statistics Office under control access. So next, I would like to discuss a few descriptive evidence. So overall, looking at the adoption of artificial intelligence and other digital technologies across all firms, we find that only 7% of all firms use artificial intelligence. And this is, of course, a low usage rate, but surprisingly, this is similar to the usage rates in Germany and the US. It is true that the data for the US and Germany is for 2018. But we see that for other digital technologies, the adoption rates are much higher. What is interesting is that the users of artificial intelligence also use other digital technologies. For example, they use Internet of 54% of AI users use Internet of Things. 94% they use cloud computing services, and nearly 60% of AI users use software for sharing information electronically within the firm. The usage of other digital technology is low across firms that do not use artificial intelligence. Looking then at the usage of artificial intelligence across different groups of firms, we find that the usage of artificial intelligence rates increase with firm size, firm age, and productivity. So these results suggest positive correlations between the usage of artificial intelligence, firm size, age, and productivity. But we also use information on the different purposes the artificial intelligence is used, and we had a discussion, a very interesting discussion yesterday. So we have information about 7 purposes for which artificial intelligence is used. And we use this information to construct a measure of intensity of artificial intelligence usage. So we find that the average intensity of artificial intelligence usage is 17.1%, which is equivalent for an average firm using 1.2 purposes. So artificial intelligence for 1.2 purposes. Artificial intelligence is most used for organization purposes, but we can see that about 1/3 of firms use artificial intelligence for marketing or sales, and also 1/3 firms use artificial intelligence for production purposes, and about 1/3 as well for ICT security. So, as I say, we want to explore more formally the probability of using artificial intelligence, and we did this by estimating probit models. So we find that the probability to use artificial intelligence is higher for the larger firms, for firms with higher within industry market shares, and also for firms using other digital technologies. Finally, on the relationship between artificial intelligence usage and firm productivity, we take a production function approach, linking inputs to outputs, and we estimate on augmented production function following work which has been done by others, among others, for example, recently by Brain, Yorkson and co-authors, and Czarniskis and co-authors. So in this approach, artificial intelligence is considered an intangible asset, and it can be accumulated and depreciated. So it is considered as a production input, which contributes to the firm output. So the output of a given firm I is a function of its total factor productivity, labor input, capital input, and artificial intelligence. And in order to mitigate concerns for endogeneity, which would bias our estimates, we control for a number of additional factors in the production function, mainly to separate the effect of artificial intelligence on productivity from other firm-specific factors affecting total factor productivity, such as skills, age, ownership, market shares, as well as industry and region-specific effects. And to account for the fact that the decision to use artificial intelligence might not be random. For example, we know that more productive firms are those investing in AI. We instrument artificial intelligence, namely using artificial intelligence and the artificial intelligence intensity at firm level with industry averages, and we exclude the given firm. So we take the average without the firm for which we construct this measure. The results suggest that using artificial intelligence is positively associated with firm productivity over and above labor and capital inputs. However, the relationship is weaker when we condition on the additional factors I mentioned. In terms of the relationship of the intensity of using AI, we find that this relationship is positively associated with firm productivity over and above other factors. So it appears that the relationship with the intensity of using AI is stronger and remains statistically significant even when we control for other factors. To conclude, there are three main findings. So we find that the adoption of artificial intelligence is not yet widely spread. The usage of artificial intelligence increase with firm size, age, and productivity, which is a result in line with the literature. Most importantly, we find a positive relationship association actually with productivity. And I think the main takeaway message is that it's not only important to look at using artificial intelligence, but the intensity with which artificial intelligence matters. And it seems that there is a stronger relationship with the intensity of using AI. There are limitations, mainly data limitations, and we are hoping that there will be a follow-up data collection so we can construct a time series data so we can actually use state-of-the-art panel data techniques in order to identify causal contribution of artificial intelligence on firm productivity. This is work in progress, and hopefully we will get better data.
Thank you very much. If I can step in with a couple of general comments, and then we'll leave the floor for discussion. It seems very clear, listening to all your presentation altogether, that we can have, I would say, a common portrait of firms that adopt AI first. So they're larger firms, typically multi-plant firms, in the case of Korea, older firms, because the same thing that we have in Italy, larger firms tend to be also less young in this respect, okay? And already more productive, okay? So I think this, we can all agree that are kind of common markers of this, for this position, this likelihood to adopt AI, regardless the country, regardless policies, regardless of more or less everything. And I have more a comment on how do we measure AI adoption. This is something that has been bugging me over the last years, and talking also to some colleagues in this room. I think we really have to make an effort to measure it in a best possible way. Patents, skills, job posting, and surveys are all very useful tools, but I'm really puzzled when a firm says that adopted AI in 2011, 2012, also looking at this longest panel, the concept of AI like 10 years ago, maybe was less common, was even less known by firms. So I would rather take some cautious approach when we make this comparison over time, even if we are lucky enough to have this longest panel. And I don't know if you have some thought of that, if you want to share some ideas and experiences on this. I would like to hear from practitioners. Thank you. Would you like to collect more questions from the room? Please.
Thank you. Excellent work. I'm continuing a little bit in the same track. So we find very regular patterns that large firms are more using AI. And if you think of that as a policymaker, the first thing that comes to mind is that, well, it's pretty straightforward what we should do. We should establish technological institutes, ask them to advise SMEs on how to use AI. And then when you look at the current applications, the novel applications of AI, you sort of wonder, yeah, but much of this may also come via AI being more user-friendly. So for example, the export companies, what would you use AI for as an exporter? Well, today you can have wonderful translation software. In many ways, AI may make it easier to be a small company, a little bit like we can all buy a software package that does standard things for us, and you get all these kind of small consultancy companies that can compete with big ones. So I'm wondering, what is our policy advice? I mean, is it simply that we should hurry to do more of the good old being advising SMEs via technological institutes. I think that would be a safe bet, as I would see it. And then on the data side, what does it really mean to use AI as we look ahead? I mean, if we have Microsoft, we probably all do it. If we use Google Maps, we all use AI. And there we probably need to refine our data going forward.
Do we have any other? Oh, yes, please.
As I was listening to this conversation, I had, I guess, three things that were comments / questions that I was wondering about. The first one was, I agree with this thing that we have measured that AI seems to be adopted by older, larger, more productive firms. These are the firms that have the resources to invest in new technologies. This doesn't surprise us. But I'm wondering if we're actually mismeasuring young firms, because most young firms, as we know, are not firms that intend to grow. They're not firms that are high tech. They're sort of subsistence entrepreneurship or local firms. And I wonder if the people that are high tech, high growth firms are really being lost in this, and we're just not surveying them well. So that's number one. Number two, I was really interested in your result that when it increased productivity, it did it by bringing up the lowest productivity plants to the highest productivity plants. And I wonder if this says something about the way our algorithms are structured right now, that we, find training data and we do predictions, and our best predictions can only match our best training data. And so we need, the example is the top level management, and that's as good as we get. And there's a barrier that we're not breaking through, that's actually inherent to the technology. And then the last question is, what do we know about the within firm wage dispersion and what it does to labor within the firm? Does it decrease labor use? Does it increase labor use? And if so, whose wages is it changing? So those were my three things I was thinking about.
Keep fighting with the microphone. Thank you very much. Any other hint, comments, suggestion, even from the back lines? Okay, so I can hand the floor back to our speakers. So feel free to share your replies and share your thoughts, especially.
I could start if I may. So very interesting comments and questions. Thank you very much. So on policy implications in terms of large firms benefiting more from AI. So as I say, it is not for all firms profitable to adopt new technologies, and this is also true for artificial intelligence, at least not very early, because there are uncertainties, but also because the potential benefits from these technologies are conditioned by other complementary investments, such as skills, organizational change, and obviously smaller firms, they don't have these capabilities and they don't have the absorptive capacity. So what would be the policy role here? So I would say that helping SMEs in particular to scale up, to grow, that would help to enable them to adopt these digital technologies. And I think in particular for a small country as Ireland, obviously the domestic market is small, so helping firms to grow by exporting is important. So it is also important, I have said this all the time over the past 2 decades, it's important in my view to take a holistic approach. So thinking how to to help SMEs to adopt artificial intelligence and other digital technologies, I think it would be important to have a holistic approach, so to design a package of measures which would enable firms to grow, so to enable them to innovate and to export. And as they grow, because scale matters, as they grow, then they could adopt these technologies as well. In terms of measurement, of course, there are many challenges, and we need better measures, and also more data. So we would hope that this will come in the next years. Thank you very much.
Okay, about the measurement issue, I think if we back to the research about ICT, I think we need if we precisely measure the AI for the research, or I don't know, for policy goals, we need data about expenditure of AI. I think that really needed to measure the exact, the data for the AI adoption. And about the larger company, I think one of the issues that definitely in our analysis, big data is the really issue. Most of a small company actually doesn't have the ability to gathering the data, and then how they handle this big data issue. I mean, as I mentioned, when you adopt the AI, big data definitely needed. In that case, actually, Korean government launching the one policy, and then they gather the actually data in like a common goods, and then trying sharing the data set to the company. That is the one of the response. The other one is that if you see that, I think the outsourcing, the share of the firm who use the AI as outsourcing is relatively lower. So in my impression, I'm not a technician, but AI technology, we believe that that is a general purpose technology, but in my impression, it's not a general purpose technology yet. So if we see we see a lot of case study when we do this analysis, each company actually use the AI technology in different way, various way, adapting to their own production process. So in this case, maybe AI technology itself is not enough to apply to the actually all ordinary company yet. So maybe government research and development focus on the more like a general technology for AI application. It would be helpful. The other one is about the labor part. Yesterday, a lot of experts mentioned some shortage of the ICT engineering. But when we did some survey, definitely they need ICT engineers, but not just the ordinary ICT engineer. They need the ICT engineer with the education at least the graduate level. So that's why a lot of firms actually complain about the shortage of the labor part. So that's why I emphasize that the policy is different from just to past research and development policy. That part important. About the plant part, we did a lot of case studies, and as I mentioned, that each firm actually applied their AI technology to their plant in a little bit different way. But couple of things is common, but most common thing is that they're gathering the data from the different plant, and then analyze the data, and then optimize actually using the data, optimize actually across the plant. They actually adjust their resource using the AI. I think that's one of the key mechanism how they increasing the productivity of farm in manufacturing. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, no,
Should we?
No.
I fully agree to all comments that have been made. I would like to focus on 3 points. So first, data. I think we should increase the efforts in monitoring AI and how it is used in companies. How is AI used in products and services in processes? And there we do some efforts with web-based information quite similar to Flavio and his colleagues, and that enables us to complement information that we can derive from patents, from survey. So this is some efforts that we do. And the second point would be that we should increase efforts in understanding how AI can lead to increased innovation in products or in processes. And I think we do not understand fully how AI contributes to increased or enhanced or augmented innovation. And if we believe, for instance, in our research, so innovation is crucial to increase productivity, and not only to remain competitive, but increase competitiveness. And there we believe that innovation is very crucial, but we do not understand how AI contributes to augment innovation. And this is also related to skills. So how does AI augment skills in the companies? How are skills and competences changed by the adoption of AI? So this is also something we plan to do in the future. And in terms of policy, that would be my third point you asked for. I think it's a bit still too early because we do not understand many things. But what we can learn from previous research on digital technologies that spillovers are important. And we do not know much about spillovers from patents into products. And how AI knowledge is shared between firms in networks, in clusters. So all spillovers are important. And if we believe in that, then how AI can be used across different boundaries becomes important. And from a policy point of view, I would say we need to understand better how spillovers are happening in the context of AI. And that would be a bit my thought on that. Thanks.
Okay, two notes on my work, and this relate to exporting performance. And the first one is that in terms of exporting, reduction of the search cost and information frictions, you don't need to use AI, because there are other firms that support this reduction on a search cost. But it's an important mechanism to improve exports. But AI could be a good help in terms of flexible manufacturing process and in reduction operational costs. And there are in Portuguese case good examples in textile industry. We use exactly AI to help the process and to improve the optimization of the manufacturing process. And this will impulse the presence in international markets. In the same way, in terms of product quality is a good point to improve the exporting performance of firms. So in terms of the relationship with AI use and its exporting, I think the 2 points, the two channels, the main channels will be flexible manufacturing process and improve product quality. Not so in terms of information friction to solve this kind of problems. Okay. The other notes I will say about measurement. It's always a problem in innovation. Or measure innovation product or measure innovation process. I think it's a whole problem, and I perhaps know new solutions you can find relate to AI. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm sure that about data methodologies, we're gonna dig very deep into the next session. So now I think we are all happy to have a coffee break. We're gonna reconvene at 11:50 here. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
So welcome back, everybody, to the fourth and final session of this workshop on using novel data and methodologies to analyze the digital transformation, which, as Francesca said, was really the use of data was really one of the topics that people really spoke about in the last session. So it'll be really good to explore that with another excellent panel. So first we have Audrey Plonk, who's head of the Digital Economy and Policy Division here in the OECD, to provide a sort of brief setting the scene remarks. Would then be followed by Fabrizio Dell'Acqua in Harvard Business School to talk about his work on the role of AI for productivity. Then we'll be followed by Michael Impink in HEC Paris on his work on AI startups. Then Giulio Pirani in the Italian National Institute of Statistics talk about some interesting work on indicators. And finally, Marina Mendez Tavares in the International Monetary Fund. So I guess I will hand over to Audrey.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. It's still 8 minutes of the morning. To set the scene on using novel data and methodologies to analyze AI and digital transformation. I'm the head of the Digital Economy Policy Division and responsible for the sister committee to CIIE, the Committee on Digital Economy Policy. So I'm going to walk you through how we've worked to implement the OECD AI principles. You might be familiar with these. On the left-hand side, we have 5 values-based principles. Those talk about developing AI for people and planet, focusing on human rights, transparency, security, safety, accountability, these type of values-based concepts. And then on the right-hand side, you see the principles that are focused on national policy making for AI. So these are things like investment in R&D, an enabling policy ecosystem, jobs and skills, and international cooperation. So I show this because it's the foundation of what we've tried to do with the observatory over the past several years, has been to build out a data-driven and evidence-based to understand the implementation of those principles. I'll just take a moment to update you on the most recent development regarding the principles, because they include a definition of an AI system, which is an important piece of the OECD's legal instrument around AI. And so we've just recently updated it. I won't get into the details of it here, but just to say that we have made some tweaks and changes since the definition was agreed back in 2019. So here's a snapshot of the OECD AI Observatory, and many of you probably are familiar with it or hopefully have used it. This is where we can monitor AI developments from different perspectives. We look at news, we look at scientific research and investments, we look at jobs and skills, we look at software development, and AI education, among other things. The goal here is really to provide policymakers and other users, researchers, whomever, with real-time or near real-time access to data and information about AI developments in the economy and in the ecosystem. And we try to do gender disaggregation where it's possible. What you see on the screen here are some examples of interactive visualizations. You can explore more of them on the observatory. You can see there at the top how to get to. It's pretty obvious. You go to live data and you can see those visualizations. You can search by country. You can compare different parameters across the data sets. Just to give you a sense of who we're using. So far we have 12 different data sets that we're pulling from for the observatory. We have several more in the pipeline. The bottom there on spend network is one that is in the pipeline that you can't see yet on the observatory, but it will be up there soon. And so we're constantly trying to have, trying to look for new data sources and evaluate them relative to, again, our objective is to observe implementation of the AI principles. In terms of methodological approach, you can see we have the general definition of AI and AI system, which I showed at the beginning, but obviously each of these data sets are different. They have different pros and cons and have to be, treated as such. So we've written methodological approaches and notes for each of the data sets that we use on the observatory. We try to explain in these notes where the data come from, how we're treating it, how what taxonomies we've used to implement it. And so you can link to these notes and read under each visualization on the observatory. They're accessible through the observatory, how we use the data. I'm going to quickly walk you through some of the data we have on generative AI, since that's sort of the thing that a lot of people are talking about these days, as I'm sure you all know. And a lot of this won't be terribly surprising based on what we sort of live in the world every day. But so obviously in the public discourse, we've seen generative AI have a fairly rapid uptake. Obviously, this coincides with the launch of ChatGPT. We see this in various data sets, which I'll show here in a second. It's gone from being sort of a niche topic to being front page news. This data here are news articles on generative AI. And so you can see, yes, I mean, we've talked about generative AI for a while, but since the launch of ChatGPT, we see significant skyrocketing in news articles. Just moving on, we have generative AI in the public discourse. So we're interested, obviously, in what people are saying, and this is from Twitter. So we have the same curve when we look at tweets. People are talking about generative AI, both online and, of course, offline. This visualization measures the number of tweets monitoring for generative AI or a hashtag of generative AI over time. And obviously, it grew eightfold, or as you can see here, eightfold from December 2022 to June 2023. So we have this goes through June 2023. Just moving on to venture capital investments. They've risen steeply. The peak you see in 2019 reflects Microsoft's $1 billion and $10 billion investments in OpenAI. So those are big peaks where you see, a lot of investment going in. And in terms of why it's dipping down, we don't have all the second half of 2023 in here yet. So expect that's going to look different when we update the data for the end of the year. We also see research accelerating in generative AI and publications following that trend. So the difference here is that the growth starts in 2017. So you would expect the research world to be ahead of the general public and things. So we can see that in the data, that the research started well before ChatGPT launch, which is the vertical line, hash line you see there. And this research publications can be tracked back to fundamental innovations such as transformer models and advances in computing, which have been big catalysts for generative AI development. Just moving on, in terms of we see also a surge in open source code development for generative AI, going again back to 2017. We're using data here from GitHub. So this means that the widespread awareness and rapid uptake of generative AI is not something that happened really all of a sudden. I mean, we sort of feel like it happened really suddenly, but if you look at how code development has evolved, it really does go back several years, and this leads us to the understanding that this has been actually a steady uptake, a steady change in AI research and AI development, and this also, I think, underscores the importance of investing in research and skills in AI. And then just moving on to talking a little bit about the risks and the opportunities and some new things we're really excited about. Just 2 weeks ago here in Paris at the Paris Peace Forum, we launched our AI incidents monitor. Here we're looking at the number of incidents or hazards related to AI in news reports. Obviously, there's a dramatic increase in 2023. Of course, people are using AI more. They're talking about AI more. This data comes from a global AI incidence. Sorry, you can go to this monitor on the OECD website. The monitor is reviewing thousands of news articles in real time to automatically identify those articles that are related to an incident involving AI. The Working Party on AI Governance develops a methodology for defining incident and for defining harm. And so when you go into the incident monitor, you can look at things related to, you can sort by country, you can sort by different kind of incident, you can sort by sector. It's early days, and so we're obviously looking at publicly reported news, but I think as the focus in AI safety and security grows over time, we will maybe be able to expand data sources into other kinds of data, such as administrative data or regulatorily reported data, since a lot of regulation is going that direction. Just the sort of our overall approach to building these live data visualizations. So first we sort of ask ourselves, from what angle do we want to analyze AI? What piece of the puzzle is missing, or what do we wish we knew? We have a large a network of experts here that we affectionately call the OECD Network of Experts on AI, OneAI. Some of you may be involved in that, and they really provide a lot of insight into those possible research angles. And then we obviously identify potentially useful data sets, and then we go and try to build data partnerships with entities that may hold those kind of data. And then we spend a lot of time getting to know the data, looking at things like its how representative it is, how sensitive it is, and building the methodologies, which you saw in the prior slides, and writing those methodological notes. And then we really do focus on trying to present the data in a clear and interactive manner. So we're looking at cross-country comparable, because that's one of the big things we do here at the OECD, but also looking at sort of per capita. If you look at research data, you can look at number of citations versus other metrics of research. So and using this kind of data, obviously being transparent, documenting over and over again how we're using the data and how we've developed the approach to its use. So just I'm not going to go through all of this, but the slides I'm sure will be made available to you. This table summarizes the technical specifications of the data on OECD.ai, including the size of the data set, how the data is fed into the platform. But the slide, again, I'm not gonna go through this in great detail, but just to say it's documented and available to you. And then some learnings from the visualizations. First of all, we've been doing this for about 3 years now, so obviously we've learned a few things. So non-traditional data can obviously provide us with some timely and interesting insights into rapidly evolving fields like AI. In doing so, it can help identify trends and developments early in the process, help us get ahead and maybe have a little bit of foresight into what's coming. Frequently updated data helps to assess the directionality of trends, but the magnitude of such trends may vary and may require additional verification and validation, as there can be lags in recording or capturing data. For example, likes to a post or tweet may grow in time, but trends can usually be assessed fairly quickly. Another challenge is that there is usually no survey design allowing us to make things comparable from the outset, which means that most of the time we need to work backwards to achieve such comparability between data sets. And most of the time it's not perfect. For example, the issue of having to align taxonomies among data sets that we mentioned earlier. So they, different data sets use different definitions and different categories of things. So we have to deal with those inconsistencies. And finally, the analysis of live data needs to happen in parallel with traditional statistical and economic analysis and other methods to validate the trends and their magnitude. So we believe that these two approaches are critical to be happening together. Sorry, I forgot to advance to this slide. So it's not that these novel data sources are at all a replacement for traditional or official statistics, but more that they need to work together and can be used in concert and in concert with each other to really help us get a better picture and on different time scales of what's happening in AI and potentially other fields as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Audrey. So I guess we move on to the panelists. So for those panelists who are online, I would urge you to please stick to the 10-minute time limit. It's difficult for me as chair to, in a subtle and understated way, to make sure that you stick to time. So Fabrizio, over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Let me share my slides. Great, thank you. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I'm super excited to present this work that we've recently uploaded. This is joint work with colleagues at Harvard Business School, at Wharton, at MIT Sloan, Warwick Business School, as well as BCG Consulting Group. And it's titled Navigating the Jagged Technological Frontier, Field Experimental Evidence of the Effects of AI on Knowledge Worker Productivity and Quality. So, of course, as Audrey already has shown in her slides, we had this fundamental generative AI moment about a year ago when ChatGPT came out, and this was perceived as a tipping point for AI, specifically a tipping point for generative AI in the workplace. And in this project, we argue that large language models, so the technology underlying tools such as ChatGPT, have three specific characteristics that make them especially relevant and different as workplace tools. One is that they have surprising capabilities. So they're trained as general models, but they've demonstrated multiple times specialist knowledge in different domains. And they outperform specialist workers in domains such as medicine, law, and so on. Also, LLMs directly increase the performance of workers. So we typically have little need for organizational or technological investment. They can just be plugged in, and the productivity of workers can increase. But also, they're relatively opaque. So the developers themselves have a hard time predicting exactly the performance of these models across a number of tasks. So when we combine these elements together, what we argue in the paper is that there exists a jagged technological frontier for AI. That is, tasks that appear to be of similar difficulty for humans may be on either side of this frontier. In one case, they may be well performed by AI, that is being inside this jagged frontier, or they can be outside of this capability frontier for AI and not being performed so well. And this work will provide two examples of tasks, one inside and one outside, with an experiment that we've run about this. So the session is about methods specifically. We ran an experiment. We collaborated with Boston Consulting Group. This is, of course, a global management consulting company that does knowledge-intensive work. And we are at the very high end of the skill distribution of workers. These are people that often have MBAs from top programs, that have PhDs. Together with the company, we've developed real-world tasks and challenges. And we wanted to study basically what were the effects of introducing such a tool into their workflow. We work with 758 management consultants. That's about 7% of the global workforce. And we run these 2 experiments that are now described in more detail to you. But first, let me give you the structure of the experiment. And this was the same across the 2 experiments. So first, management consultants came in and they performed an assessment task through which we gauged their skills. After this, they were randomly assigned to 3 experimental conditions. So in one case, they used no AI. They just went on going with their standard approach, that is no AI, and completed this task. For 2 of the experimental conditions, they received AI support. And I won't go into the details of what distinguishes these 2 conditions. We can discuss it more, but in both of these conditions, they receive assistance from an AI tool. And the whole experiment lasted 5 hours. So just to give you a visualization of this, we first recruited management consultants. They completed a survey. Then they received their assessment task, also completed another survey, and we evaluated their abilities. After this, they were randomly assigned to different conditions, either AI or not, and then completed their experimental task. And then eventually this concluded with another survey, and we interviewed all participants to our experiment. So when I say they were assisted by an AI tool, this is a ChatGPT-like tool, but really we developed our platform. We used OpenAI's API. We used GPT-4. This was fixed at April 2023, still the most advanced model in this area. And the idea was to capture all prompts and all the GPT responses and timing, so the full interaction that participants had with the AI tool. Now, I told you about these 2 sets of tasks. The first set of tasks is what we call inside the frontier. So these are tasks that we know the AI performed well. We pretested this extensively. And so just to give you an idea, these were 18 questions, but I'll just read the beginning of the prompt. So you're working for a footwear company in the unit developing new products. Your boss asks you to present an idea for a new product at the next manager's meeting. Please respond to the questions below. 1, generate ideas for a new shoe aimed at a specific market or sport that is underserved. 2, pick the best idea and explain why. 3, describe a potential prototype shoe. So as you can see, these are different types of tasks. There is a creative task, there is a persuasiveness task, there is writing skills, analytical task. Overall, they had to develop a new product creatively. And then we evaluated all these responses. So each individual response and sub-response was evaluated on 1 to 10 scale. We had human graders both at Harvard Business School and at Boston Consulting Group, 15 people overall. Also, and again, I won't go into this, but we also had GPT-4 scoring these responses, as well as grading by Llama, Claude 2, and Palm. But all the results that I'm presenting are about use human evaluations. And so we could have a combined average performance across all these different tasks. And when we look at this exercise, we see a very stark difference of using AI versus not. So when we look at the curves in red and green, we see these are the GPT groups, the groups using AI, and they clearly outperform the control condition that is in blue. So remember, these are highly paid consultants. They're doing tasks in their own domain, and we give them a tool that costs $20 per month, and their performance improves by about 40% across a range of tasks. So these results were pretty astonishing. At the same time, we also have a measure of similarity of their responses. So in this case, on the x-axis, we have a measure of similarity, and we see that the green and red curve, that is those of the groups using AI, are more similar than the control condition. So the responses provided by people using AI were actually more similar among themselves than the human-only responses. And this is an important caveat for companies introducing AI. Then we moved to outside the frontier. So we had a separate task that was about a business case, and we knew that AI by itself would have some difficulties completing this task. So again, just to give you an overview, the CEO would like to understand cladding's performance by the company's 3 brands to uncover deeper issues. Please find attached interviews from company insiders on the issue, and also an Excel spreadsheet to provide financial data. So their tasks were 2. First, if the CEO must pick one distribution channel to focus on to drive growth profit in the company, what channel should that be? And then please also suggest innovative and tactical actions that the CEO can take. So this is a business case. It has a clear, correct answer. This is something we elaborated from an exercise that BCG uses for their own hiring. And we know the correct underlying answer. And in this case, when we look at performance, we see that the control condition was about 85% of times correct. So these are people that are very good at this type of task. They took the data, they took the interviews, and they correctly solved the exercise. To the groups to which we gave GPT, the performance goes down. So if we take the average, it's about 65%. So we have a 19-point percentage decrease in performance when management consultants use AI for a business case. But then interestingly, we asked them to provide additional recommendations and to explain the reasoning. And we see that no matter whether they were correct or incorrect in their recommendation, in their explanation, they were rated better. So if we see the blue bar in both instances, both when they were correct or not, the blue bar is ahead of the green bar. So people using AI actually were perceived as providing better explanations than people not using AI. So just an overview of the key findings. We find a very stark impact of AI on productivity. I didn't go through the timing effects, but overall consultants using AI completed tasks more quickly by 25 and 30%. But then also crucially, there is this potential for quality enhancement with using AI. So AI assistant consultants produce results that were 40% higher compared to consultants without using AI. At the same time, there is this issues in navigating this AI frontier, because tasks outside of the capability frontier actually saw a 19% decrease in correct solutions when AI was used. And this is very relevant because, again, these are tasks that these workers are intimately familiar with. They're highly paid, highly skilled, they're incentivized. And however, when we gave them AI, their performance for this task outside of the frontier dropped. We have a bunch of ongoing work using the data we've collected with the experiment. So this mention of similarity that I already showed in the graph. So we see that when performance improved inside the frontier, also similarity among responses increased. So of course, this potentially has some consequences at the organizational and general economic level. Also, we see differential benefits across skill levels. So the consultants that really benefited the most from using AI inside the frontier were those that performed worse originally. So we see that consultants below average improved by about 43%, while those above average improved by only, quote unquote, 70%. So still very important improvements, but more so on the lower end of the distributional skill levels. And then finally, we're interested in studying exactly how people interact with these AI tools. So for now, we've identified 2 broad patterns. One that we call centaurs, where human tasks and AI tasks are clearly divided. So humans know what they're doing, know to do some things, and then use AI to support in other areas. And cyborgs, where instead there is a very integrated workflow between humans and AI, and each task is actually shared between humans and AI. So in conclusion, this is a study about human-AI collaboration over the capability frontier of AI performance. We collected objective metrics of performance in highly skilled knowledge work. Overall, we can say that AI lowers the cost of cognition, and so clearly has this transformative potential that I'm sure everybody here is very aware about. But there is this differential impact of AI on tasks within and outside its capability frontier. And so more broadly, I would say there's different avenues to interpret these results. And I'm very excited to hear your thoughts and comments about this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Fabrizio. So on to you, Michael.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you. Let's see. I think the slides are coming up. Hi, so I am Michael Limpink. I'm an assistant professor at HEC Paris. So I'm going to talk to you today about the AI startup survey that we've been running for the last 5 years with co-authors Jim Besson at Boston University and Rob Siemens at New York University. So we're currently in year 6 of this. The views will be from the last 5 years. So really just to land something you all know today already, since you're here, rapid advancements in algorithm had led to this rapid commercialization of AI. And we've seen how, not only news articles and funding have increased, but AI has become much better at doing human tasks. And so this has really led us to this question of, well, how have startups really changed, and what can we gain by asking startups about their business, their production practices, and different ways that we can be more informed of what's happening in this very transformative industry. It's not only large firms that are coming up with products, but we find, especially with, say, OpenAI, that startups are really driving a lot of this change. So we have novel data from this AI startup survey. It runs once a year. We reach out to overall about 4,500 firms in the last run. In prior runs, we reached out to, in total, about 6,000 firms, I believe. We have 1,200 responses, and so 26% response rate over time. We're building out a panel. So in each round, we have about 500 responses now, and so we're really getting to a point where we see many firms responding more than one time. We have one firm, which I always say deserves a gold star because they've responded all 5 times, and so I'm going to mail them the gold star at some point. And then thinking about this survey of AI startups and how we get it to the right people, we collect a sample from PitchBook and Crunchbase. We look for AI development. We ask them about their AI development practices to make sure they're doing this. And then we email the CEO and the CTO and the founders. So email addresses that we collect either through Crunchbase, PitchBook, or through private sources, trying to actually come up with the best way to contact these people. And so really trying to get this executive or founder view on things. These are quite small, quite young firms. And so on average across the entire sample, they're less than 5 years old. About half of them are quite small, so less than 11 employees. So 15% in healthcare, and this is an industry that's very important when we think about ethical implications of AI. Really, this is a developed market focused survey, and basically the data on a lot of the startups that would be doing AI in emerging markets very hard to find. Focused mainly on the US and Europe, with intensity in the US. So altogether, we pair this with many other data sources and have a few working papers. And I'll quickly talk about one of them after I introduce some of the data. But the main findings here from this survey, and this is all very descriptive, is there's lots of heterogeneity by industry. And so we begin to see the use of AI, and specifically our interest when we think about who's responding and who's developing. You see it's not just one industry driving this. You see the products are going into lots of different industries, which, like any general purpose technological change, points to the importance of this technology in revolutionizing how these workers and organizations interact with one another and interact with their products and their customers. We also can see that AI sells to different type of workers, right? So this is yet again the broadness of the products. Even coming from an AI startup, these are not just Microsoft and Google. These are the products that are using cloud services likely from those companies, but really focused on driving individual solutions, and in many cases across a wide range of different use scenarios. So you see managers and professionals are the top ones to be targeted with these products. When you look down, manual workers, administrators, those are less likely to be targeted. And this really fits what we know about the heterogeneity in AI and how it affects labor. And so we have our first working paper that focuses on this difference in labor and how labor could be more affected by certain types of AI. And we use questions in the survey to really get at understanding which types of AI are going to impact labor more. And is this going to augment, or will this replace the worker? And so this is just another method of thinking through some of the big questions that already exist, but thinking from that lens of an AI startup is also selling a product to a customer, and those products do things that could actually give us insight into a broader world of AI development. Next, thinking about the location, and I mentioned this is very developed market focused. Even Asia here is going to be Asia, such as Singapore, Korea, Taiwan. These are going to be countries where you actually have more of a developed market feel. you begin to get a sense of the different cloud providers and how this could, to some degree, differ by area, but really these partnerships are quite stable and quite similar across. And so you see Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and apologies, the font's a bit small there, but these are cloud providers and that commonly work with these AI startups, and they really have a global presence. And so these firms have great touch across all of these industries and are helping drive some of these collaborations, enabling these startups to access some of the initial resources they need to develop their products. Next, looking at the different types of stages these firms are at. So we're really looking for firms that are early stage. Some of these have products, not all of them do. And so if you look here to the chart to the right, about half of these firms have a shipping product. Otherwise, they're in beta or pre-beta, so very, very early stages. And this points to our very small startups and how we're focusing on really the initial stages of development here and making sure we're capturing those high growth startups that are really trying to push their products forward. As you know, many of these startups will fail, and over time, we'll begin to capture that data. Currently, of our sample, I think around 15% have already failed, and so we're beginning to capture small numbers here. About 3% have been acquired, gone public, and so you're beginning to see trends that represent other trends seen in entrepreneurship. Next, this is more recent questions. And so each year when we add a theme to the survey, we looked at labor, we looked at GDPR, and then we've looked at ethics and then corporate governance. When we added the ethics questions, we already also began to add questions on the specific types of AI frameworks. And so getting at those technologies used by startups. If you look here, the most common framework, which is no surprise for the technical crowd, is TensorFlow. You see PyTorch being used often. Many of these types of frameworks have tools that could be important, like A/B testing. It could be other ethics-based toolkits, but they enable you to check the fairness of your product. And so this could be very important for firms that want to create more ethical products and more fair products, because the data they're using, they don't really know if it's actually going to create bias. And some of these frameworks can help with that. You can actually see that some of these frameworks are driven by more sophisticated algorithms. And so we define this as using neural networks or ensemble learning, which are commonly algorithms that are used to push the AI over this border between can you do it better than a human? And so this is coming from some statistics from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And then we validate all of these. And so the other piece of this survey is we're reaching out to, I think, 1,200 firms in total, and we have lots of data. And so our focus as academics is really making sure this data is appropriate, representing the firms. And so we think of all the different data we could pair this with from third-party objective sources. And the good news, just to let you know, is it works out. So this is very positive to see that we're getting startups that aren't necessarily lying to us. I guess they don't have too much reason to lie to us. And then certainly we begin to see, and I'll quickly run through this just in the next 2 minutes, many of these firms and many of us have concerns about how AI is being used. And this has led to a more recent working paper where we're actually talking through the effective ethical AI policies. And so these are policies startups often put in place. And then also the actual use of more ethical actions. And so this could be things like dropping more biased training data, going out and searching more training data, looking for developers that are from an ethnic minority or some sort of diverse group of people, so they actually bring in more to the coding process and could actually reduce fairness. And so following up on a large stream of literature around this. But at the end of the day, bias could exist, and wanting to understand where this bias enters into product development. And certainly we know that AI has these feedback loops that drive this bias forward. Ultimately, the goal here, I'm in a business school, we want managers to be focused on the right outcomes. And so looking through all of this data and certainly all of the feedback we've received for startups, the goal here is to, even if there is bias, to let managers know of that bias and help give them a tool set that they can work around it. And then quickly to run through, because I think I'm running out of time quite fast here. Startups handle this risk by doing lots of different things, but mainly we focus on their relationships with stakeholders, so suppliers, customers, investors. We also look at geographic areas, so where your customers are and the infrastructures and institutions that are there, and then also where your firm is located. And so we begin to get a sense of all the stakeholders and the relationship between those stakeholders. and their development. And so just in net, we find that there's an impact to these startups having relationships with stakeholders across industries and their addition of an AI ethics policy. We don't really find a strong connection between the AI ethics policy. And so this is when you think about Google or Microsoft have these written documents, they spread far and wide that talk about the use of AI and how to create less biased AI. Many startups have adopted some of these. We don't find a strong connection between having those policies and actually using those policies. It's more of a signaling tool, and we're trying to understand more the mechanisms at play here. We do find some really interesting relationships between the types of stakeholders you have and using these more ethical actions in development. And so that really plays out more clearly in the paper. But thinking through relationships with VC funds, thinking through relationships with large technology firms, and how you can actually get to that action piece instead of just adopting a policy that no one's using. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. So it's now on to Julia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the OECD team, which gave me the possibility to provide you with some information about what is going on in the European statistical system about the production of digitalization information, digitalization data. I would like just, I will touch two main points, two main issues really in the statistical production, and focusing on the ICT survey. The ICT survey has been already mentioned several times during this workshop because it's the main source of indicators about digitalization, not only in Europe, but at international level. What is really peculiar of the ICT survey in Europe is that all the information produced by the 27 EU member countries, in addition some associated countries or candidate countries, are collected by Eurostat, harmonized, and is Eurostat going to disseminate this data at international level? It means that the quality of data produced by Eurostat that have to be compared with data produced by other OECD countries, for instance, is essential to have very high quality information about the trends going on in the digital context. Well, the ICT survey is now in place since the mid-90s, and there are some very well-established indicators, maybe some of them a bit outdated. But more recently, a new set of indicators has been developed. According to the Eurostat terminology, they are called e-business indicators. So it's quite good. It should be welcome, the initiative by the European Commission to produce a scoreboard leading to a digital, leading to an index of digital intensity based on the ICT survey indicators, considering a large set of different technologies to be considered with an holistic approach to be essential, not just for what we could name the digital transition, but actually a digital transformation of European enterprises. Unfortunately, in terms of data availability, not all these indicators are available for the same year. As you can see, there is a strategy by Eurostat not to collect the same indicators for all years. And well, this of course is affecting the time series, the analysis of time series. And for instance, just to make the example of AI, we have most of European countries having available only 1 year for the AI indicators, 2021. And we expect to have new data for 2023. And now currently is under discussion how to ask about AI in 2025. especially what in Europe is the Statistical Institute will ask about the ChatGPT in 2025. That will be discussed in the coming weeks in Luxembourg. And I wonder how we can have an idea what will happen in 2025 with the generative AI. But the problem here is not just about the rows. It's also, in my view, about the columns. Because if we consider some additional data produced in Italy, and we have used the large multipurpose survey, we have a very large sample, around 200,000 enterprises. We can see that not all technologies are the same. So the point is not just to count how many technologies are used or adopted by an enterprise, but the point is to have an idea about which technologies are adopted. And we can see there is a basic difference between the infrastructural technologies and the technologies more oriented to improve productivity. As you can see, in the middle, we can find the cybersecurity application, a kind of enabling technology and quite relevant, and also with some influence on the AI strategies of enterprises. But this approach, that's of having these technological indicators available for a single year for a large sample of enterprises, is also relevant to identify the strategies by the enterprises. So how the different technologies are combined to identify the specific profiles for the investment in technology and ultimately in the digital transformation of enterprises. About the specific of AI measurement, of course, it's a very difficult field to introduce in the official statistics, but an additional problem is that there is also a very strong competition by private data producers. And something that is common among these private data producers is that the rate of adoption they have found in considering very small samples of enterprises is pretty high. And what we have realized that this the level of rate of adoption we can find the results of international surveys is not very consistent with the result we have from the ICT survey for 2021. So we have an average of 7.9% of a rate of adoption of AI in Europe. Of course, Denmark on the left is an outlier, probably. I guess because some previous surveys have been carried out in Denmark, and there could be some learning effect among the survey respondents. But on the average, we can see that even the largest European countries are not performing so well. The percentage for Italy is 6.2, and this 6.2 is obviously used for the digital intensity scoreboard. But using data from our census, we can see that the percentage we have estimated for enterprises with at least 10 employees is much higher. So where is the point? The problem was similar for the survey carried out among employers at international level by the OECD in 2022. And the OECD were trying to understand why even the result of the OECD survey, which was 40% of adoption in finance and insurance services and 30% as an average, as a rate of adoption, was much higher than the Eurostat data. And they assumed there were three main reasons. The first reason was the size threshold in the sample. Another reason was to have a voluntary rather than a mandatory survey. Another point which was raised was that of excluding having excluded the finance and insurance services from the Eurostat survey, which is a problem per se. But when comparing the Italian data, ICT data with the data from the Italian census is more or less the same population, the same reference population. So we need to find an additional motivation to explain this big difference. 20% rate of adoption from the census, 6.2 from the ICT survey. Well, I guess that this is largely due to the approach used in the design of the Eurostat questionnaire, because all surveys we have mentioned, including the Italian census, are just asking for uses by enterprises of AI technologies. The Eurostat, and overall with the support of other also EU Commission directorates, adopted a different approach, asking first for technologies. You can see it's difficult to read, but it's not difficult to find the actual questionnaire. So asking first for technologies and using the first question as a filter before you asking for uses. It means that if an enterprise really cannot be aware to using a specific technology, is not simply asked about the uses of those technologies. So I think that this issue should be addressed, and so something should be done in order to have high quality results and mostly results compared to other international surveys. So just a few points as a conclusion. Well, the ICT survey, to be clear, is a flagship survey in the European statistical system. It's a very high quality exercise and mostly in terms of timeliness and flexibility. But on the other hand, some priorities in the design of the survey, in my view, has to be changed. The priorities currently are to reduce the burden for respondents first, to accommodate the policy needs second, and only third, to assure very consistent trend, to monitor indicators, to monitor the technological trends. I think these priorities should be changed to some extent. This is particularly true for AI indicators. We should develop some common understanding that for enterprises, uses are more important than technology. So the progress in the adoption of this kind of technologies has to be followed, if possible, with a higher frequency, because, well, sometimes the econometricians like to see adoption as an event, but actually the technology adoption is a process, and we have to monitor that. So I think that in this perspective, the OECD could even to encourage Eurostat and also other statistical institutions to adapt their methodologies or to make a proposal for a specific module to be used in multi-purpose surveys, just in order to fill the gap with the needs we have from researchers and policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. And finally, Marina. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to be speaking today as well as more like a policymaker that work in an institution where our focus is also really in cross-country work and how we deal with data problems when do this analysis. And I'm going to be talking this in the context of digitalization. So, okay. So at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, policymakers and academics alike expected that the pandemic and subsequent containment measures would accelerate digitalization. with potentially important implications of labor market and productivity. Now, 2 years, almost 3 years after the pandemic, two emerging puzzles have challenged our priors. On one hand, on average, in advanced economies, aggregate labor productivity rose following a common counter-cyclical pattern in recessions. Still, for many sectors, labor productivity experienced a substantial decline and has yet to realign with pre-COVID-19 trends. And we can see here this on the left chart, the black line. This stands in contrast with expectations of an acceleration in productivity in the wake of the pandemic IC-related investment. On the other hand, there were concerns that increasing digitalization could displace middle and low-skilled workers, driving more inequality in the labor market. However, labor markets have been still tight, as you can see in the right chart. So what I'm going to be, the three questions that I'm going to be discussing today. First, what was a digitalization state before the pandemic and how has the crisis impacted? What has been the impact of digitalization productivity? And what has been the impact of the COVID-19 induced digitalization on labor market? And the caveat of this analysis that was done with 2 years after the pandemic, now almost 3 years. So, but when we discuss if the impact was transitory or permanent, still the time series is quite short. So in the first parts of the presentation, and here I think it's connected very well with the prior presentation, I'm going to be measuring digitalization as the share of workers with internet access. And this is coming from Eurostat. However, because we want to speak about a large sample of advanced economies, we had to complement this analysis as well with data, for example, for the US, where you use the US survey of business and manufacturing, and our measure of digitalization in this case were software spending per employee. But we showed that these two measures are quite related. So what we find that an increase in digitalization during the pandemic, particularly in countries that were less digitalized. In the average country, the share of workers using a computer with internet access rose above the pre-COVID-19 trend in 2020 and remained above the level predicted by the trend in 2021 in the left figure. This increase was smaller for frontier countries, those with already high levels of digitalization, and was markedly more pronounced for non-frontier countries, as shown in the right figure, thus implying a partial catch-up of the later group and the narrowing of the digitalization gap among advanced European economies. This phenomenon was especially strong among small firms, those with less than 50 employees, that had lower levels of digitalization in the beginning, and for contact-intensive sectors, which had low initial levels of digitalization, but experienced the largest rise, such as food and accommodation, construction, transportation, and storage. Now, what we do next is that we use a regression analysis to quantify how productivity fluctuations during the COVID-19 were associated to sectors' digitalization level. Here, the dependent variable is the yearly growth rate of productivity in a sector, which is regressed on the year-on-year change in the country-level Google Mobility Index, which is a proxy for the economic shock from the pandemic, both by itself and interact with the sector digitalization level. The sample is composed of 9 sectors for 2022 countries over the period of 2020 until 2022. We have a number of control variables. To a large extent, we are using cross-country variation in digitalization for a given sector. The results show that for more digitalized sectors, the relationship between the mobility index and the productivity was more mute, and especially so for non-contact intensive sectors, which were less constrained by demand shocks. In 2020, a country where a given sector had a high level of digitalization, the 75th percentile of the sector-specific distribution, saw a contraction that was 1/3 to 1/2 smaller than the same sector, but at a low digitalization level, the 25th percentile. So digitalization provided a shield for productivity losses. We did a similar analysis as this one, but for fluctuations in hours work, and you can see that result in the right panel. And we found that higher levels of digital intensity in a sector reduced loss in hours work at the pandemic peak by 85 to 40% when comparing a high level of digitalization relative to a low level of digitalization for the same sector. And this effect was strongest in non-contact intensive sectors. And we also did a much more granular analysis using US composted data, where you had a digitalization measure at the firm level and results were similar. However, it's now moving on. So another measure that we inspected what in this study was whether the pandemic-induced digitalization push also changed the structure of employment and the demand of different skills. To look in this, we focus not the industry, but the occupations. And here what we do is that we use ONET, which is if you're not familiar, is a detailed job description database. And we construct a digital score at the occupation level based on information relating to the use of and knowledge of digital technologies to perform tasks essential to each occupation. Occupations with very high score tend to be related to IT and STEM jobs. Around the median score are jobs that are not necessarily thought of as a computer-based, but that may still require interaction with digital technology, for example, like nurses and accountants. Low-score jobs are mostly those involving manual tasks, such as skilled artisans and construction workers. For the analysis, we use the 50th percentile of the digital score as a threshold to define occupations above it has a digital and below non-digital. As we see in the figure, workers in digital occupations are more likely to be women and highly educated compared to those in non-digital jobs. So as shown in the left figure, across a sample of countries, the share of employment in digital occupations generally rose in 2020 and 2021, and more so in countries with initially low share. However, in several of these, it's partially reversed in 2022. Hence, there is not much evidence of a structured shift in the composition of employment. More granular regression analysis for the US and the UK using regional variation with exposure to the COVID-19 shock confirm this. The center figure, for instance, shows that in the US, states more exposed to the COVID-19 shock experience a deeper contraction in the employment of non-digital occupations compared to less exposed states. However, there was no differential in the shock to digital ones. This gap, however, was only temporary. As of 2021, the difference in non-digital occupation diminished significantly. A similar picture emerged for vacancies, which are better proxies for labor demand in the right figure. Here, both in the US and the UK, regions that were more exposed to COVID-19 saw only a temporary rise in the share of vacancies in digital occupations relative to the exposed region. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip this slide and I'm going to conclude. So to conclude, the pandemic triggered an increase in digitalization, especially in less digitalized countries, sectors, and firms. Digitalization did shield labor productivity hours in digital occupations, but without a structural change. So in our view, this was more like a temporary shock. A main change was the persistent increase in work from home, particularly in the US, that could have boosted workers' welfare and maybe explain a little bit the wage compression that we see. While the pandemic-induced digitalization was possibly focused on basic forms of digitalization, it may lay the foundation first for faster implementation of advanced digital technologies such as AI. However, there are still large gaps in digitalization across countries, and without closing this gap, you can also be able to broadly use AI, I think, which is the main topic of the conference. So I think the bottom line is government can support the digitalization by investing in infrastructure and human capital and forcing competition ITC. And labor's regulation still must adapt to a work where people work more remotely. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Are there any questions or comments, preferably short ones from the room? No. Okay. So just a general question for the panel then from online. So how do you think the data methodologies that you've been that you address in your papers sort of help us better understand the implications of the use of things like generative?
So I think we'll be able to answer that question better next year because we were adding it to the survey coming up in February. So stay tuned, and there hopefully will be a better response.
Yeah, I think we should realize whether the AI can be monitored, can be measured using the existing methodologies and definitions, or we are really dealing with a totally with a brand new field of statistical data collection that will need new tools and new definitions and possibly new methodologies. So it seems to me a bit strange, frankly, that we still have some specific surveys on ICT technologies or digitalization, because digitalization is everywhere. So the point is just to understand how the economy in the context of digitalization is working, how basically about business statistics, how businesses in this context are developing their own strategies. So it's something to further develop and to discuss also with analysts in order to improve constantly the quality of data produced.
And Marina, Fabrizio?
No, I just can say that I think for us, we are always fixing the shortcomings because we need to do cross-country data analysis. And for example, here we are using a very basic measure of workers using computer with an internet access, exactly because it was a measure that we found that was more broad and much better well populated. But I also feel from the point of view of when today in this conference, we saw many work done with employee matching data, like very granular survey data. But I think it needs to be an effort to make this data public available, right? For academics and general public, people in other institutions. And I feel that the access to data is still a big barrier for increasing research. And that's something that it's important. Thanks.
Yeah, and on my side, I would say there's a question of how to exactly measure the impact within organizations, and something that came up also in another presentation. If we think of this really as impacting the workflow, we want to have intermediate measures of its impact throughout the workflow, and often, you know, it's not something that necessarily companies have been thinking about and organizations more generally. Yeah, so I would see this as a very promising avenue.
Great, great. Thank you very much. We're actually running over time, so I guess we will go to Flavio to give some closing remarks.
Thank you, David, and thank you very much. Let me thank all the speakers, keynote speakers, panelists, presenters, session moderators, and chairs. Thank you very much for your extremely interesting contribution to the different sessions of the workshop, and thank you all for participating here at the OECD or online. Let us thank again the German Federal Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs for the generous support to the WIPS program to which this workshop contributes, and all the contributors to the work presented in these days, including the participants in the AI Diffuse project. During the workshop, we have touched upon several topical issues related to AI, digital technologies, and their implications for economic outcomes. Professor Avi Goldfarb yesterday provided a great keynote pointing at the challenges and opportunities of AI for economic growth. And among the many relevant insights, he pointed to the debate on the automation and substitutability between AI and tasks vis-a-vis their complementarity, and the extent to which automation in some tasks may lead to augmentation of labor elsewhere. Professor Giacomo Calzolari today gave a second great keynote discussing the role of AI for competition, in particular on the impact of AI on markets and the extent to which algorithms tend to autonomously to collude, and on the challenges for competition associated to recommender systems. The policy panel yesterday touched upon several key topical issues from the policy perspective, including the tension between innovation at the top and diffusion, the role of competition authorities in dealing with the challenges for competition and consumers, and discuss about how policy can help leverage the potential for a digital and green transition, for instance, focusing on the role of infrastructures and skills. 3 extremely interesting and rich sessions yesterday and today have discussed new analysis, focusing on the role of AI and digital technologies for productivity, on the role of innovation and competition, the implication for export, the role of workforce composition and human capital, and the dynamics over COVID-19, with different contributions using data from several countries. They've also discussed the use of novel data and methodology, such as experiments, ICT, and startup surveys, as well as the challenges in measuring the digital transformation. This has been 2 extremely rich half days exploring how AI and digital technologies are linked with economic outcomes from a cross-country perspective, and focusing on how policy can foster an inclusive digital transformation in the age of AI. Just a final word to thank all the team behind the organization of this workshop. This was very much a collective effort with several colleagues involved from the Productivity, Innovation and Entrepreneurship division of SCI, led by Chiara Criscuolo. Chiara had already mentioned Lia Samek sitting next to me. Thank you very much. And let me greatly thank again Antonio Ughi, who is sitting on the front, for the key contribution to this event. Last but not least, let me thank Shai Somek, Marcio Carvalho, and Jennifer Lee for their great help throughout. So let us close. This work has been a great occasion to bring together academics, policymakers, and researchers to discuss about AI and digitalization. We hope this is the starting point for a continued conversation on these issues. Stay tuned for further OECD work in this area. Thank you. And just a final technical note for people in the room, the WPIA meeting will start at 2:30. We would like to kindly ask all delegates and participants at the table to take their belongings, and as we will prepare the room for the meeting. Thank you all again.